Hey everyone, today we're going to tear down one of the most important business books of the last couple of decades. We're talking about The Lean Startup by Ries. We're going to get right into this disciplined, almost scientific way to build businesses that don't just succeed, but can become radically successful.
So let's start where the book starts. It doesn't begin with some huge success story. Nope. It begins with the gut punch of failure. The author, Eric Ries, talks about this moment, standing on a street corner with his co-founder after their first company just completely imploded. And the thing is, they thought they were doing everything right. They had the brilliant idea, the great team, the cool product, and yet they were out of money and completely out of options. And look, this wasn't just his story. This is basically the default setting for startups. As Ries says, and it's a grim quote, most startups fail. Most new products are not successful. Most new ventures do not live up to their potential. Think about that. All that time, all that passion, all that money, just wasted. That's the huge problem this book is trying to solve.
And that leads to the really powerful question at the heart of all this. What if all that failure isn't just inevitable? What if it's not about being some kind of visionary genius or just having the right stuff? What if it's actually about having the right process? Well, that's the promise here, that there's a different and way more effective way to do things. And this book, The Lean Startup, is basically the playbook for that whole new approach. It lays out a new kind of discipline for entrepreneurs, one that helps them avoid the single biggest trap of all, spending all your time and energy building something that in the end absolutely nobody wants. So, to really get what the lean solution is all about, we've got to first talk about the myths it's trying to replace. Let's start with that classic and kind of dangerous startup story that we've all been told 1,000 times. You know the one, right? This brilliant founder has a perfect, world-changing vision. They lock themselves away in stealth mode for a year, 2 years, perfecting their product. And then, bam, they unveil it to the world in one huge, dramatic launch. Well, Rai says that's basically a fairy tale, and a dangerous one at that. The reality for startups that actually make it is way messier. It's less about a perfect vision and way more about turning your ideas into hypotheses that you can actually test, getting out of your office to get real feedback from customers early and often, and just constantly, relentlessly iterating on your product. Okay, so if that old myth is wrong, then what's really going on here? What's the real root cause of all this failure? Why are so many smart, hardworking teams building things that just flop? Here's the absolute key. A startup, by its very definition, is an organization trying to create something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. I mean, think about it. You don't really know who your customer is. You don't really know what they need or will pay for. The future is a total question mark. And that right there is why the old rules just don't apply. Traditional management, the kind that works at big, established companies, is actually toxic for a startup. Why? Because it's built for a predictable world. Trying to write a 5-year business plan with all these detailed financial forecasts, it's just an exercise in creative writing when your most basic ideas haven't even been tested in the real world. It just doesn't work. And remember, this isn't a small thing. It's the norm. This level of failure isn't because people aren't working hard enough. It's because they're using the wrong tools for the job. It's like trying to navigate a winding, foggy road using a map that only shows a perfectly straight highway. We need a whole new system, one designed specifically for this wild, uncertain environment. So if writing a rigid plan is a waste of time, but just winging it with a just-do-it attitude leads to chaos, what's left? Well, this is where we get to the heart of the book. The idea that entrepreneurship itself needs to be treated like a form of management, a new kind of management. And this requires us to totally redefine what progress even means. For a startup, progress isn't building more stuff. It's not hiring more people. Real progress is validated learning. That's the process of rigorously discovering what your customers actually want by running little experiments that give you cold, hard data. Every bit of learning has to be earned or validated. This whole methodology is built on 5 big ideas. 1, entrepreneurs are everywhere, not just in garages. 2, entrepreneurship is management, it just needs a different kind. 3, validated learning is how you measure progress. 4, the core activity is something called the build, measure, learn loop. And 5, you need a new kind of accounting for this new kind of progress, which Ries calls innovation accounting. All right, now we're going to zero in on that 4th principle, build, measure, learn. Because honestly, this is the engine. This is the practical day-to-day thing that makes the entire lean startup model actually work.
So here's how it works. This is the core loop of a lean startup. You start with an idea. Then you build the absolute fastest, simplest, cheapest version of a product you can that lets you test your biggest assumption. We call this a minimum viable product, or MVP. It doesn't even have to be real software. Think about Dropbox. Their first MVP was just a video explaining what the product would do to see if people would even sign up. Next, you measure. You put that MVP in front of real people and see how they actually behave. Not what they say, but what they do. And finally, you learn. You look at that data and you ask, did this prove our idea was right? If yes, great. You persevere and build on it. If not, you pivot. You make a smart, structured change to your strategy based on what you just learned. Now here's the secret. The real key to winning isn't just going through this loop. It's about how fast you can go through it. You want to minimize the total time it takes to go from an idea to a product to real customer data and back to a new idea. The startup that can learn the fastest is the one that's going to win. Speed through this loop is everything. And that brings us right back to where we started. The whole point of this build, measure, learn loop is to systematically eliminate waste. The waste of building features nobody uses. The waste of marketing a product nobody will buy. And most tragically, the waste of all those countless unrealized dreams. Look, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this analogy. A traditional business plan treats a startup like a rocket ship. You do all your calculations, you aim it perfectly, you hit the launch button, and you just pray that it hits a target years down the road. The lean startup, on the other hand, treats a company like a car. You know your destination, sure, but you are constantly steering, reacting to turns, hitting bumps, and navigating the real world to get there. It's about steering, not just launch up. So let's end on a practical note. Think about whatever you're working on right now. It could be a brand new business or just a small project at your job. What is the single biggest, scariest, unproven assumption that your entire success relies on? And more importantly, what is the smallest, fastest, cheapest experiment you could possibly run, like this week, to get some real data and find out if you're actually on the right track?